I'll represent him." Every head in the courtroom snapped toward the voice, clear, steady, and absolutely audacious. A young black woman stood near the back row, apron strings still hanging at her hips, forehead damp with sweat. She hugged a battered folder to her chest as chuckles and scoffs rolled through the gallery. Phones lifted, cameras aimed. "Who is that?" someone hissed. "Probably the cleaning crew." Another snorted. "What's next? The janitor presiding?" Latter rippled, cruel and careless, but Jade Thompson didn't flinch. At 29, she'd met condescension in 100 forms, yet never felt it cut deeper than here, before Manhattan's legal elite in a room never designed for women like her. The judge blinked, thrown off balance. "I'm sorry, miss." "Jade Thompson, Your Honor," she replied. "I'm asking to stand as provisional counsel for Mr. Brandon Cole." The name stirred murmurs. Brandon Cole, tech magnate, charming, ruthless to some, now facing federal charges for contract fraud and financial misconduct, topping $30 million. His pricey defense lawyer had simply evaporated, vanishing on day one. Months of preparation, and his attorney failed to appear. Rumor whispered he'd bolted overseas. Brandon, seated beside the empty defense chair, twisted to glare at Jade, disbelief written across his face. "You!" he snapped. "You should be polishing baseboards, not playing make-believe in federal court." Latter shook the benches. Someone near the aisle muttered, "Bold move, showing up with a mop and a dream." Jade held her ground. She drew in a slow breath and stepped forward. "I've reviewed every document in this file, every contract, every ledger entry, every sworn statement. I know this case more intimately than anyone else present." The judge's brow climbed. "Miss Thompson, are you a licensed attorney?" "No, sir." Her voice didn't waver. "I attended Columbia Law," Jade continued, "but had to leave after my second year when my family hit a financial wall. Since then, I've worked domestic jobs to keep us afloat and pay off debt. But I never stopped studying. I track federal decisions, especially economic crimes. I've spent 3 years dissecting rulings like this. This case in particular," she added. "I could recite backward." The room quieted. Even the prosecutor, Erica Shaw, tall, blonde, perfectly tailored in deep navy, tilted her head, curiosity slipping through her polished composure. "Objection!" Erica said crisply. "This is highly irregular and flirts with mockery of the court." The judge lifted a hand. "Noted." His gaze stayed on Jade. "However," he went on, "given Mr. Cole's counsel has failed to appear, if he consents to Miss Thompson speaking on his behalf for this preliminary session, I'll allow it under strict oversight." Brandon looked as if he'd swallowed acid. "You expect me to let a housemaid defend me in federal court?" he muttered. Jade leaned down, voice low but firm. "I may not be licensed, Mr. Cole, but I can see exactly how they're lining you up," she whispered. "Right now, I'm the only person here not actively trying to watch you burn." If you think Jade's courage deserves respect, drop a 1 in the comments and hit like so more people hear her story. Brandon breathed hard, then exhaled sharply. With a gruff grunt, he flicked his hand. "Fine, do your worst." Jade nodded, moving toward the defense table, each step measured. She set her worn folder down and opened it carefully. Inside lay handwritten notes, cross-referenced case citations, color-coded tabs, and printed contracts, the very documents Erica Shaw intended to use to dismantle Brandon Cole's reputation, company, and freedom. Erica reclined slightly, lips curving into a smug half-smile. I hope you brought something stronger than highlighters and shopping lists, she murmured. Jade glanced up, unbothered. I brought logic and receipts. A collective gasp fluttered across the room. The judge cleared his throat. Proceed, Miss Thompson. Jade lifted a page, voice projecting with surprising command. On March 12th of last year, she began, Mr. Cole's firm was asked to revise its joint venture agreement with Altair Holdings. The revision, Ms. Shaw alleges, was forged under my client's name, originated from an IP address in Zurich. Yet the original terms, she raised a highlighted section, remained valid under an SEC filing dated 2 weeks earlier. Which means, Jade continued, if someone manipulated those terms, it is far more likely that the plaintiff orchestrated the forgery. Erica's smile evaporated. Jade kept going, voice steady, reaching every corner of the courtroom. Only minutes earlier, the gallery had sneered at her. Now they leaned in. Her words carried something rarer than credentials, unyielding conviction. Her hands never shook. For the past year, Jade had secretly devoured economic litigation on her late-night breaks. She read transcripts until the lines blurred, scribbled notes while listening to legal podcasts, even mailed herself printed materials to create a personal record, just in case opportunity ever knocked. Today, that door had swung open, and she refused to let it close. The judge tapped his pen thoughtfully. This is persuasive material, he admitted. We'll recess until tomorrow to review the evidence and decide whether further action is appropriate. Miss Thompson, you may return then, pending my assessment. Jade inclined her head. Thank you, Your Honor. As she stepped back, her pulse hammered, but her stride did not falter. She could feel the eyes on her, startled, skeptical, shaken. Brandon Cole stayed seated, jaw tight, silent. But for the first time that day, he didn't look like a man abandoned. That night, Jade sat at a cramped kitchen table in her basement apartment in Newark, the same table where she'd once helped her little brother with fractions while stirring a pot of soup. Now the surface was buried beneath legal documents, sticky notes, a half-eaten grilled cheese, and her open laptop streaming an old lecture from a trial advocacy professor she had once admired. Her apron still hung off the back of the chair, stained from the morning's chaos at the Cole estate. The echoes of the courtroom reverberated in her head. She saw their faces again, confused, amused, doubtful, and then Brandon's unreadable expression. Jade sipped lukewarm coffee, leaning closer to the printed contracts. Something about the revised joint venture clause nagged at her. The phrasing didn't match Brandon's prior agreements, the rhythm of the legal language oddly foreign. She wrote a note. Compare wording Waradi Altair versus prior domestic deals. Her phone buzzed, making her jump. Unknown number. You were impressive today, a low, amused voice drawled when she answered. Didn't expect the woman in the apron to flip that room on its head. Jade's shoulders stiffened. Who is this? Think of me as someone in that courtroom with more to lose than you realize. You're poking at a sleeping animal, Jade. Watch where you swing that stick. The call cut off. For a moment her hand shook, then she forced herself to inhale slowly. Fear wasn't new. She'd grown up walking home alone through alleys no one patrolled, watching her mother juggle 3 jobs and still face eviction notices. But this fear felt different, cold, intentional, sharpened like a blade. The next morning, Jade arrived at the Cole estate earlier than usual. Brandon didn't expect her. I didn't schedule a meeting, he said as she stepped into his office, dressed in her usual gray cardigan and jeans. You also didn't schedule someone to keep your name from being dragged through federal mud," she replied, calm but unbending. He studied her. "You think yesterday actually moved the needle?" "I think it cracked a door," she answered. "Now we need to push it open." Brandon tapped a pen on his desk, eyes narrowing. "You came prepared." "I always am," she said quietly. "You just never bothered to look closely." Silence stretched between them. Jade stepped closer. "Mr. Cole, someone is engineering this." She pointed to a contract copy. "That revised clause? It's too polished, too calculated, and your signature was applied remotely." "I was in Napa that week," he said. "Wine conference. I signed documents on my tablet constantly. Standard procedure." "Do you actually remember opening that specific file?" He hesitated. "Not really. My assistant Simon usually organizes everything. I skim and click." Jade's brow knitted. "Where's Simon now?" "Quit last month," Brandon said. "Said he needed a break from the pace." "Or he needed distance," Jade murmured. "You're insinuating Simon forged my signature?" "I'm saying someone exploited your trust. I think it began with him." That afternoon, Jade took the subway to Midtown, tracking down the address where Simon had once rented a desk in a CO working space. She walked the hallway, reading nameplates one by one. A fading label still read, "Simon Pratt, Contract Consulting." She knocked. No response, but the door sat slightly ajar. Inside, drawers gaped open, papers scattered. A laptop charger hung empty from a power strip. The faint smell of stale coffee lingered, underscoring the hurried departure. Something had clearly spooked him. Jade stepped back, carefully, heart thudding, and snapped a quick photo of the disarray. As she turned to leave, a folder on the floor near the desk caught her eye. Inside were 3 draft contracts. They matched the disputed documents almost exactly, except for one detail. The metadata footers differed. One referenced Zurich, another New Jersey. Jade's throat tightened. She clutched the folder against her chest, then slipped it into her bag. The next morning in court, she sat quietly at the defense table, notes aligned, every page in order. Brandon hadn't said much since their conversation, but he gave her a brief nod on his way to his seat. "Quite a performance," Erica said as she strutted in, heels clicking sharply across the marble. "Morning," she added sweetly, eyes glinting. "Ready for round 2, counselor?" Jade rose. "More ready than you realize." Their voices soon clashed over the contract's origins. Jade presented the mismatched metadata. Erica objected, but the judge allowed a review. Then Jade unveiled a side-by-side clause comparison. "Your Honor, the language used to incriminate my client mirrors drafting conventions common in European corporate firms, not standard American contract construction. Mr. Cole's prior agreements follow U.S. formulas. This shift suggests a ghost draft originating overseas." The courtroom fell into tense silence. Brandon leaned forward slightly, lips parted. Erica's jawline hardened. "I request a continuance," she blurted. "We need to confirm the authenticity of this evidence." "We already have," Jade cut in, holding up a chain of custody summary from a vetted digital forensics team. These copies were recovered from the hard drive of a Simon Pratt, Mr. Cole's former assistant, missing since yesterday. The judge's expression turned grave. "This may no longer be a straightforward fraud matter. We could be dealing with document tampering and conspiracy." When recess was announced, Jade stepped into the crisp air outside, lungs finally drawing a full breath. She leaned on the railing, staring out over the city's gray sprawl as traffic buzzed below. Brandon joined her. Moments later, Ty loosened, eyes clouded. "I don't even know how to respond," he admitted. "Then don't," she said quietly, still watching the streets. "Just remember not to underestimate the woman in the apron again." That evening, Jade returned to the Cole estate, fatigue dragging on her shoulders. The electricity of the courtroom still hummed in her mind. Erica's shaken stare, the whispering spectators, Brandon's stunned silence. For the first time, Jade felt truly seen. Not as background help, but as a mind that mattered. She slipped off her shoes at the side entrance, padding through the silent kitchen. The staff had long gone, leaving only humming appliances and ticking clocks. She reached for the kettle, pouring hot water into a mug, dropping in a chamomile tea bag before leaning against the counter with closed eyes. This kitchen was where everything had quietly begun. 3 years earlier, she'd stood here on her first day as a housekeeper, 23, broke and boxed in dreams. She'd hidden textbooks under the sink, studying case law between shifts. While others slept, she memorized briefs by flashlight and combed legal databases on a second-hand laptop. This space became her secret campus. She took a sip, frowned, and shifted her weight. Something crinkled under her heel. Bending down, she found a small torn envelope with no name, just the embossed logo of Altair Holdings. Her pulse quickened. Jade carried the envelope back to her tiny basement room and opened it carefully. Inside lay a single wrinkled, stained sheet, an internal Altair memo dated 6 months before the lawsuit. It described strategic realignment with coal industries and outlined potential legal routes to force renegotiation if Brandon resisted preferred terms. A chill moved up her spine, like ice. Strategic legal pressure had been on the table long before any revision request. This wasn't mere fraud. It was orchestrated manipulation. Jade slipped the memo into a plastic sleeve and added it to her growing binder. Then she pulled out her notebook and listed names: Altair board members, in-house lawyers, affiliated firms. One name she underlined twice: Nathan Lord, General Counsel. Nathan had previously worked at a private equity firm notorious for hardball tactics. His name had surfaced repeatedly in the discovery emails Jade reviewed. The next morning, she called an old Columbia classmate, Tyler Grant, now chasing stories at a scrappy investigative paper in Queens. "Ty, I need a favor," she said. "Quiet, fast, and completely off the record." He hesitated. "You asking for a background check or trouble?" "Both," Jade replied. "I need a blueprint of a fire before it burns everything down. Someone's been constructing this for months." That night, they met in a greasy diner near his office. Over tepid coffee and shared fries, Tyler slid a manila folder across the Formica table. "Lord's tied to an offshore outfit that builds contract leverage scenarios," Tyler explained. "Corporate speak for drafting fake pressure points to force companies into renegotiations." He flipped a page. "He's been linked to 2 sealed whistleblower cases." Jade's heart climbed into her throat. "And one whistleblower turned up dead 6 months after settlement. Ruled an accident, no autopsy." Jade closed her eyes briefly. "You sure you want to keep pushing this?" Tyler asked. "I don't get to walk away," she answered. "Not when they're weaponizing the law against people's lives." The next day in court, Jade kept her face composed as Erica sashayed in, carrying a new binder and wearing a brittle, too bright smile. "Your Honor," Erica began smoothly, "we moved to exclude yesterday's metadata evidence, given concerns about its origin and chain of custody." Jade rose. Objection! The court already accepted the forensic review as authentic, and we now have additional documentation tying the altered documents back to a plaintiff's side employee. Erica's eyes narrowed, voice turning icy. Miss Thompson is not a licensed attorney, yet her informal participation has unearthed more relevant facts in 48 hours than your entire firm managed in 2 months, the judge said dryly, cutting in. Objection overruled. Whispers rippled through the audience. Brandon glanced at Jade, saying nothing, but giving a faint nod. Later, Jade returned to the Cole estate to collect remaining house files. She passed the grand front hall where portraits of the Cole family loomed in gilded frames. Her footsteps echoed against polished stone as she climbed the stairs to the office Simon had used before quitting. It smelled like leather and dust. Jade opened drawers systematically. Staples, sticky notes, spare chargers, and then, tucked in the back of the bottom drawer, a black planner. She flipped it open. Most pages held mundane reminders. Dry cleaning, grocery lists, call schedules. But wedged in the week of April 10th was a sticky note in red ink, Zurich packet, and beneath it a 4-digit code, 2913. Jade stared, pulse racing. That was the same week Brandon's contract had allegedly been signed remotely from Zurich. Safe deposit box? Courier locker? She wasn't sure yet, but it was a solid lead. She was still studying the note when Brandon stepped into the doorway. I should have noticed more, he said quietly. Jade didn't look up. You trusted people who wanted your name more than your partnership. He moved closer, eyes on the planner. And you. What do you want? She finally met his gaze. Accountability, she said, even if nobody prints my name in the headlines. Brandon nodded slowly. You're wasting genius polishing marble floors. Jade shook her head. No, I've been training. She slipped the planner into her binder and snapped it shut. Tomorrow, she said, we dig deeper. 2 hours after sunrise, Jade stood in Jersey City. Her coat hugged tight against the chilly spring wind as she stared at a drab concrete building. The address matched the one she'd found by cross-referencing Simon's 4-digit code with local courier lockers. The Zurich packet note had kept her up all night, poring over shipping logs and corporate mail records until the code pointed her here. A private storage service. Corporations used it for sensitive drop-offs. Inside, her boots echoed on the concrete. The receptionist barely looked up. Locker access, the woman mumbled around her gum. Jade nodded, sliding over the sticky note with 2913 written on it. I'm collecting for a former employee, she said. The woman eyed her skeptically. You got ID? Yes. Jade handed over her state ID. The picture showed a younger version of herself. Before law school heartbreak, before endless shifts, before federal courtrooms. The receptionist squinted at the screen, then shrugged. Lockers still active. Someone dropped a packet 8 weeks ago, supposed to come back, never did. She passed Jade a small metal key. Second row, numbers on the left. Jade exhaled. Thank you. She walked briskly, heart thumping harder with each step. The locker door opened with a dry click. Inside sat a slim, sealed manila envelope, blank except for a red wax seal stamped with an embossed L. Lord. She slipped it beneath her coat and left, nerves prickling under her skin like static. Back at her apartment, Jade sat at the kitchen table and carefully broke the seal, almost expecting something to explode. Inside was a USB drive and a printed memo marked Confidential, Internal Counsel Only. She scanned the text, stomach tightening. Nathan Lord had addressed it to Altair's executive board, outlining legal architecture for a hostile contract takeover. It detailed sample clause edits, VPN rerouting to create remote signature trails, and instructions suggesting that if a target resisted, they should pursue litigation under misrepresentation pretext. Jade's hands shook. The USB contained spreadsheets and files tied to coal industries by project code and date. One stood out. Forecast: Altair negotiation round 3. It projected expected profit from litigation leverage, $23.4 million. They had literally budgeted the lawsuit as a revenue stream. Jade stared at the numbers, breath shallow. This wasn't only about Brandon Cole. This was about power, twisted and monetized, using the court system like a crowbar to pry ownership away from people who resisted. She printed the memo, highlighted the most damning lines, then grabbed her coat. Brandon needed to see this. At the Cole estate, he was on a call when she arrived. Jade slid the memo across his desk without a word. He skimmed the header and froze. "Where did you get this?" "Simon left it in a storage locker," she answered. "The USB holds more. They'd mapped this playbook months before you even hesitated to sign anything." Brandon rubbed his face, color draining. "They were going to strip the company no matter what I did. And frame you," Jade said softly, "so you couldn't fight back." He slumped into his chair. "We need to take this to court." "We will," Jade replied. "But we have to lock down the trail first. If we submit this without airtight verification, Erica will shred it." Brandon exhaled sharply. "I'll call my head of it. He's done secure financial forensics." "No," Jade said, sharper than she intended. "Not yet. We don't know who's compromised. Until we do, we keep the circle small." That evening, Jade met Tyler again at the diner. He pored over the memo and USB files, eyebrows climbing. "Whoever drafted this," he muttered, "has the ethics of a rattlesnake." "Can you help trace the IPA logs?" Jade asked. "Tie them back to Lord's network?" Tyler nodded slowly. "Give me a couple days. Less if my tech guy's in a good mood." As they talked, Jade noticed an older man at a corner booth watching her openly. His gaze was too focused to be casual. She tensed. Tyler followed her eyes. "Friend of yours?" "No," Jade said quietly, "but I've seen him. Courthouse. 2 days ago." "Think they've tagged you?" he asked. "Maybe." That night, Jade installed extra locks and checked the windows twice. She copied the files onto 2 additional encrypted drives, one tucked into a hollowed-out book on her shelf, the other wrapped in foil and buried behind a bag of frozen peas in the freezer. A precaution she'd picked up from a documentary on whistleblowers. Then she sat down, building a timeline. Every email, every clause change, every suspicious travel expense. She mapped how the contract language warped over time, when Simon filed Switzerland charges, when Nathan suddenly demanded sole control over negotiation strategy. By 2 a.m, her table looked like a conspiracy diagram. Highlighters, arrows, overlapping dates. Only this plot wasn't fiction, and if she misstepped, powerful people would bury it in her. The following day, Jade entered the courtroom with deliberate steps, evidence folder clutched tight. Rain still dripped from her coat hem. She'd rechecked every memo, transfer confirmation, email, and timestamp 10 times. Today wasn't just another procedural date. Today, they'd offered documents that could crack Altair's carefully polished mask. The atmosphere inside felt different. Warier, charged. More eyes followed her now. Mockery had dulled, replaced by uncertainty and a hint of unease. Some still saw her as an oddity. Others clearly recognized a threat. For the first time, few dared laugh. Erica strode in shortly after, face rigid, flanked by two men in dark suits, lawyers of her own, not colleagues' insurance. The judge entered, and the room stilled. "We'll begin with newly submitted evidence from the defense," the judge announced. "Miss Thompson?" Jade stood. "Your Honor, defense offers Exhibit C, a series of internal emails between Mr. Simon Pratt and Mr. Nathan Lord, as well as financial documents reflecting a wire transfer to a Swiss account tied to an entity controlled by Mr. Lord. These support our contention that Altair's lawsuit was not only baseless, but fabricated as part of a calculated scheme to defraud and forcibly acquire coal industries," she finished. She handed the packet to the bailiff, every step purposeful, time stretching as the courtroom held its breath. The judge read silently, eyes moving back and forth. Erica remained stone still, though the tension in her jaw screamed. Then came the moment Jade had anticipated. "Ms. Shaw," the judge said, looking up from the pages, "do you have a response to these allegations?" Erica stood, smoothing the front of her navy suit, mask of practiced calm slipping at the edges as dozens of eyes turned toward her. That night, Jade returned to her apartment and noticed a plain white envelope shoved under the door. No name, no return address, just a single sheet inside. "You've made enemies. Be careful which hill you choose to die on." No signature, only the faint smear of printer ink. She stared at the message for a long beat, then calmly held it over the sink and lit a match. The paper curled, blackened, vanished in a hiss of smoke. She didn't sleep. Instead, she duplicated every file, encrypted copies on flash drives, dropping one with Tyler Downtown Insurance. By morning, a bulging manila envelope waited on her doorstep. True to his word, Brandon had delivered months of internal communications, board minutes, employee emails, correspondence with Altair executives. As Jade flipped through, patterns surfaced. One thread snagged her attention: late-night exchanges between Simon and Nathan Lord, disguised as routine consultation chatter. She read those messages 3 times, brow tightening. Subject lines like "Altair pressure cycle," forwarding draft language, and most damning, "need this signed before coal lands." They'd counted on Brandon being distracted, traveling, arrogant enough not to read every line. When the plan cracked, they simply pivoted, betting his reputation wouldn't survive. Simon had disappeared the moment things unraveled. Jade knew what she had to do. That afternoon she headed back to Simon's old East Village apartment, now listed for sublet. She convinced the landlord she was Simon's assistant sent to retrieve a forgotten file. The man grumbled, but unlocked the door anyway. The place was nearly stripped. Bare walls, empty shelves, except for a stack of neglected folders on the kitchen counter. Jade rifled through them quickly, fingers moving on instinct. She froze at a neatly printed receipt, a wire transfer to a Swiss bank dated 1 week before the lawsuit. Recipient: L Holdings, Zurich. She snapped a photo, folded the original, and tucked it into her binder. Outside, a sleek black sedan slid to the curb, the rear window lowered with a soft whir. Inside sat a man in his early 40s, immaculate suit, pale eyes that hardly blinked. "Miss Thompson," he said evenly. Jade's body went taut. "Who's asking?" "A representative," he replied. "Our firm believes this spectacle has gone far enough. You're intelligent. You understand how these things end." "Is that a threat?" she asked. "An option," he countered. "Walk away now, and everyone goes home whole. You've already made your point." Her heart hammered, but her voice stayed calm. "Tell your people the only way I'm walking away is through those courthouse doors with the truth in my hands." He studied her. "Truth can get very expensive," he murmured. Jade shrugged. "Good thing I'm already broke." The window slid up, car gliding off. For a moment, she stood motionless on the sidewalk, the city flowing around her like she wasn't there. Then she turned toward the subway, replaying every detail. That evening, she met Brandon in his office. He looked older, shoulders sagging under the scandal. "I don't know who to trust anymore," he admitted. "Then trust what we can prove," Jade said, laying out the wire receipt and email printouts. Brandon scanned them, eyes widening. "I gave Simon everything. He sat in every board meeting. I thought he was loyal." "Silence isn't loyalty," Jade replied. "It's leverage. They've been using your blind spots as currency." He looked up. "You honestly think we can win this?" She nodded. "If we stay 3 steps ahead, stay loud, and make it impossible for them to bury what we've uncovered." Brandon leaned back slowly. "You've done more in a week than a dozen expensive firms did in a year," he said quietly. "I'm not doing this for you," Jade repeated. "I'm doing it for people like me, who never get a seat at the table unless they drag their own chair in." A faint smile touched his mouth. "Then let's make sure no one ever kicks that chair out." That night, she spread notes everywhere. Back in her apartment, surrounded by papers, Jade thought of her father, the man who'd raised her on Malcolm X speeches and chess games, balanced on a milk crate in the Bronx. He'd died before she finished school, before any courtroom. But she could almost hear him. "Don't let them forget your name. Make sure they remember who stood up when nobody else would." She opened her laptop, staring into the bluish glow. "I'm not backing down," she whispered. Rain slicked the courthouse steps the next morning as she climbed. Coat soaked, hair curling at the edges, knuckles white around the evidence folder. She'd rechecked everything: memos, transfers, emails, timestamps. This wasn't just another hearing. This was the strike meant to crack Altair's shell. "Your Honor, defense submits Exhibit C," Jade said, offering emails between Simon Pratt and Nathan Lord and proof of a Swiss transfer. The judge read, then looked up. "Ms. Shaw?" "Your Honor, we dispute the validity of these materials," Erica said, standing. "Nothing confirms they weren't cobbled together afterward. These supposed transfers could be fabricated as well." "We expected that," Jade cut in, moving forward before the judge could respond, "which is why we had every file examined by an independent digital forensics team. Signatures were matched against prior regulatory filings, and the transfers were confirmed through the Swiss intermediary's own audit logs. Their sworn affidavit sits in that packet, Your Honor." The judge inhaled slowly. "Very well. I'll conduct a detailed review. For now, both sides are to remain available for continued questioning." He called recess, but no one rose. The room held a different weight now, something like judgment approaching. Brandon leaned closer to Jade. "You didn't just shake their foundation," he whispered. "You blew a hole straight through it." Jade's reply was quiet. "I'm not here to rattle walls. I'm here to keep anyone from stacking lies on cracked concrete again." Outside, reporters swarmed, microphones and flashes colliding. "Ms. Thompson, is it true you worked as a housekeeper before this case?" someone shouted. Jade paused, turned. "Yes, I did, and I still scrub the same kitchen 3 nights a week." Nervous laughter fluttered. Some assumed she was joking. She leaned closer to the nearest mic. "Let me spell it out," she said. "I didn't need a corner office or $1,000 suit to recognize abuse of power. All I needed was my voice and the facts." The crowd went suddenly quiet. Recorders held a little higher. That evening, Jade met Tyler at the diner. He scrolled his phone, eyes wide. "You're everywhere," he said. "For what?" Jade asked, brow raised. He flipped the screen toward her. A photo of her standing in the rain, folder clutched tight, eyes razor-focused. The caption, "The housekeeper who might break $1 billion empire." Jade exhaled. "That's not what this is supposed to be." "Of course not," Tyler said. "But it's what people latch on to, a woman who was never meant to speak, speaking loud. A black woman in an apron, standing where billionaires crack, that's the headline." She shook her head. "I don't want celebrity. I want accountability." Tyler leaned closer. "Then brace yourself. When you talk straight to power, power answers, and it rarely whispers." Right on cue, Jade's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "He knows where you sleep." Her throat tightened. "They're done pretending," she murmured. Tyler's jaw clenched. "You need backup. I'll find someone to keep an eye on your building. No sirens, no spectacle." "I'll manage," she insisted. But the edge in her voice was thinner than usual. That night, sleep came in fragments. Every groan of pipes, every car door outside jolted her awake. She kept her binder on the nightstand, one hand on it like a shield. By morning, she looked drained, but there was a steadiness in her eyes. She headed to Brandon's estate for a final strategy meeting. "You're collecting enemies in penthouse offices," Brandon said as she walked in. "Heights don't bother me," Jade answered. "I just want to see where the ladder actually ends." He slid a fresh document across his desk. "My private counsel drafted a motion to dismiss on grounds of criminal tampering. With what you've uncovered, it has teeth." Jade read it slowly, nodding. "Good, but we don't stop at dismissal. We countersue for fraud, defamation, emotional trauma. Let them feel what it's like when the system points at them." Brandon studied her. "You've changed." "No," she said. "I just stopped shrinking." As she left, Brandon watched her go, realizing that for the first time in weeks he wasn't the most powerful presence in the room, and to his surprise, that didn't bother him at all. The courtroom buzzed long before the judge appeared. Press benches overflowed, some reporters standing, whispering live updates into microphones. The city wasn't just watching for the money at stake or Altair Holdings' polished brand. They were watching her, Jade Thompson, the woman in the apron who'd become a symbol of quiet resistance, breaking into the loudest spaces. Jade entered calmly, wearing a simple navy dress, binder in hand. Her face bore exhaustion, but her posture didn't bend. She ignored the cameras. They were irrelevant now. Brandon rose as she reached the defense table. "They're calling it the cleaning lady case," he murmured. "Saw it on cable last night." She didn't flinch. "Let them. That's the language they understand. They don't know what it means to brief cases in a laundry room with roaches overhead. They don't know how it feels to fight when no one even realizes you're in the ring." Brandon nodded. "You're going to win this." "We're going to win," she corrected, "but not by following their script. We write our own rules now." The judge took the bench and called court to order. "Today, we address the defense motion to dismiss, based on evidence of fraud, tampering, and unethical corporate conduct," he announced. "The court has reviewed the materials overnight. Ms. Shaw, you may proceed." Erica stood, composure slightly frayed at the edges. Your Honor, we maintain the defense's evidence is circumstantial, tainted in origin, and prejudicial. We move to exclude under Rule 403. Jade rose before the judge could respond. Your Honor, we've obtained further confirmation regarding the Swiss transfer. The receiving institution has verified that the account belongs to an entity where Mr. Nathan Lord is a primary beneficiary. Their notarized statement is included in our latest exhibit. The judge motioned for the documents, eyes sharpening. Continue, Ms. Thompson. Additionally, Jade said, stepping closer, we have a new witness, a junior associate from Altair Holdings, prepared to testify under federal protection. A sharp, collective inhale swept the courtroom. Erica's voice snagged. Who? Jade remained steady. Her identity is sealed for safety, but she has direct knowledge of fabricated clauses, manipulated IP routing, and targeted defamation. If her testimony corroborates these claims, the judge said slowly, and is found credible, it may justify full dismissal and trigger a separate criminal inquiry. Erica sagged just slightly into her chair. Court recessed to prepare the witness. Outside, Jade met the young woman, Elena, mid-20s, pale and shaking. She clutched a messenger bag like armor. You sure? Jade asked softly. Elena nodded. I was there when Nathan told us to rewrite the metadata. I heard him say the goal wasn't winning. It was wrecking Mr. Cole's name so no one would cross them again. Jade rested a hand on her shoulder. You're doing what most people never would. Elena swallowed. I'm just tired of biting my tongue. I can't sleep with this on me. Jade nodded. Then let's give them something they'll never forget. That evening, Jade walked Newark's worn streets back home. The city felt heavier, like the concrete was paying attention. She passed the corner bodega. Mr. Kim waved from behind the counter, handing her a bottle of water. You on the news again, he grinned, teeth crooked. Don't let them push you around, Miss Jade. She managed a tired smile. That's the idea. When she reached her apartment, the hallway felt off. Inside, the lamp was knocked over, papers disturbed. Nothing missing, just chaos. Someone had been there to rattle her, not rob her. She backed out slowly and called Tyler from the stairwell. They came in, she whispered. Didn't take anything, just wanted to send a message. Tyler cursed under his breath. You're done sleeping here tonight. I've got a cousin in Hoboken. Quiet building, mostly retirees. You'll disappear. Jade hesitated, then exhaled. Yeah, okay. That night, perched on a floral couch among porcelain cat figurines, she worked. Fear no longer paralyzed her. It simply sat beside her, an unwelcome guest. She phoned Brandon near midnight. I want to go fully public, she said. You already are, he replied. Not like this. I mean, a full press conference. Show the documents. Make burying them impossible. You'll paint a bullseye on yourself, he warned. Already there, Jade said. Might as well make it worth it. Brandon sighed. Fine, I'll set it up. But once we step into that spotlight, there's no walking it back. Jade looked out at the quiet street. Then we stepped together. The next morning, Jade stood behind a podium outside the courthouse, facing a wall of cameras and microphones. Flash after flash exploded. Her tone stayed calm. I wasn't hired to lead this fight. I wasn't groomed for court, but I stood up for the truth, and I'm not sitting down. When power rests on lies, she added, it deserves to fall. Behind her, Brandon gave a brief nod, jaw tight. Somewhere in the crowd a voice murmured, she's not just defending him, she's defending all of us. The following morning, in the Hoboken apartment, a gentle knock sounded. Jade cracked the door open, half expecting a journalist or something worse. Instead, Tyler stood there with the 2 coffees and a paper bag. "Thought you'd need caffeine and carbs," he said. Jade took a cup. "Thanks. I barely slept. Been waiting for the other shoe to drop." "Sometimes the scariest moment isn't when they swing," Tyler replied, sitting beside her. "It's when they go quiet." She knew he was right. Support messages flooded her inbox. Single parents, janitors, law students sharing their own war stories. But Altair's silence gnawed at her. No statement, no denial, just corporate stillness. Around mid-morning, Brandon called. "Lord hasn't shown up to headquarters in 2 days," he said without preamble. And Erica filed a motion to withdraw, citing some vague conflict of interest. Jade stood up too fast. "She's jumping ship?" "Looks like it. And Elena got a message last night. Not a threat exactly, but they know she talked." "They're scrambling," Jade said. "They can feel it slipping." Brandon's tone dropped. "I've watched rich men do unthinkable things to protect secrets. Be careful." "I'm done going back into the shadows," she replied. By noon, cable news blared updates on Lord's disappearance and leaked financials. Anonymous documents tied him to accounts in Panama, Zurich, Singapore, shell operations. Altair had sworn didn't exist. The story had outgrown court transcripts. It was now about systemic rot. Watching the coverage with Tyler, Jade whispered, "This isn't about clearing one CEO anymore." Tyler nodded. "You've become a symbol." "Then I need to behave like one," she said. That afternoon, she and Brandon met at a neutral law office he'd rented. Files were stacked everywhere, private security at the doors, and an independent advisor, attorney Marcia Delgado, sat reviewing their evidence. "You don't just have dismissal," Marcia said eventually. "You have grounds for damages, emotional harm, intentional sabotage, possibly even endangering a witness." Jade watched Brandon. "You ready for that?" He nodded slowly. "They aimed to erase everything I built, my name, my legacy, and they nearly succeeded." "They would have," Jade said, "if someone hadn't read every line." Marcia looked up. "You know they'll try to settle once they see you won't fold." Jade's response was immediate. "Then we don't settle. We expose every inch. No secret agreements, no hush money. We drag it all into daylight." Brandon leaned back. "This feels like war now." "No," Jade said. "War is what they started, quietly, when no one was looking. This is accountability." That night, returning to Hoboken, her phone vibrated with another blocked call. She answered evenly. "This is Jade." "You think you're clever?" a gravelly older voice sneered. "You think you've won?" "Not yet," Jade replied. "You have no idea who you're up against." "Actually," she said, "I do. Men who hide behind money and fear. I'm not scared of either." The line clicked dead. She stared at the screen, then opened her laptop and got to work. She drafted a comprehensive narrative tying every piece, emails, transfers, memos, testimony, into one coherent document. She emailed copies to 3 attorneys she trusted, 2 journalists, and stored another on an encrypted drive. If anything happened to her, the truth wouldn't vanish with her body. The next morning, Elna called sobbing. "They went after my dad," she choked. "He runs a dry cleaner in Flatbush. Someone smashed the front window, stole nothing, just left a note. Stay quiet." Jade's stomach knotted. "Is he hurt?" "Shaken, so am I, but I'm not backing off." "We're close," Jade said. "Hold firm." By Friday, the judge ordered a full evidentiary hearing. Lord was still missing. Altair's board issued a hollow, "We're shocked" statement, but their stock had tanked nearly 20% in 48 hours. Regulators were circling. Brandon stood beside Jade on the courthouse steps, no longer just a client, an ally. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashing. Jade approached the microphones. "This isn't just about me or Mr. Cole," she said. "It's about every worker ever crushed by a system designed to protect the powerful. We've proven that persistence, evidence, and courage can crack even the thickest walls." The crowd clapped, not wildly but steadily. In the back, Elena watched with tears streaking her cheeks. Jade caught her eye and nodded. They were no longer fighting from the shadows. They were redefining the light. On the day of the evidentiary hearing, the air felt strangely still. Pale daylight filtered through courthouse windows as Jade climbed the steps, binder hugged close. Her name had drifted far beyond the city, whispered in dorm rooms, union halls, coffee shops. Inside, she carried the final pieces, additional internal emails, more staff affidavits, and a sworn statement from Elena's father. Brandon met her outside the courtroom, looking worn but resolute. "Ready?" he asked. Jade offered a small grin. "I was born ready. They just didn't believe it." Moments later, the judge took the bench, quiet falling like a curtain. Board members from Altair sat stiffly in the gallery. "Today," the judge announced, "we determine whether the defense's fraud and misconduct claims warrant dismissal and possible referral for criminal prosecution." Jade rose. "Your Honor, defense submits Exhibit D, an email from Mr. Nathan Lord, dated 2 months before filing, detailing a strategy to destabilize coal industries and seize key assets." The judge's brows lifted. "Authentication?" "Verified by 3 independent analysts," Jade replied. "Metadata aligns with device logs, and the sending IP traces back to Altair's secure VPN." Erica was gone. In her place sat a rigid attorney from a white shoe firm, expression carefully blank. He stood. "Your Honor, the plaintiff doesn't dispute the email's existence, merely its context." Jade didn't wait. "Then let's show the context." She projected the full chain, highlighting replies from board members endorsing the plan, and lines like, "Cole won't see it coming and have Simon manage the signature trail." Gasps rippled. The judge looked to plaintiff's counsel. "Do you care to respond?" The man cleared his throat. "Not at this time, Your Honor." The judge's gaze shifted to Brandon. "Mr. Cole, would you like to speak?" Brandon stood. "I built my company with people I trusted," he began slowly. "Some betrayed that trust. But what matters now isn't just my reputation. It's acknowledging how easily voices like Ms. Thompson's get sidelined. She wasn't supposed to be heard, but she is, clearly and honestly." He turned to Jade. "I thank her, not as a businessman, but as a man almost broken." Jade swallowed hard but focused. "Alina," she said gently, "would you share your statement?" Elena rose, shaking but resolute. "I joined Altair believing I'd found opportunity. I stayed quiet because I was terrified, but Ms. Thompson gave me courage. Nathan Lord ordered us to alter timestamps and delete digital trails." "I did it," Elena continued. "I'm ashamed, but I refuse to keep hiding what we did." The judge nodded gravely. The next hour blurred with exhibits. Wire logs, chain of custody reports, even surveillance clips of Lord entering a Zurich private banking office, secured by investigators Brandon hired at Jade's urging. Finally, the judge spoke, voice ringing. Given the substantial evidence, the credibility of witness testimony, and the plaintiff's inability to rebut these findings, this court dismisses the case in its entirety. Furthermore, we refer these materials to the U.S. Attorney's Office for potential federal fraud charges. His gavel fell. There was no explosion of cheers, only a dense, stunned silence, like the pause after a storm when everyone checks what's still standing. Outside, reporters surged forward. Jade stood on the steps, no longer an anomaly but an answer. "Any comment?" someone yelled. She stepped up to the microphones. "Truth might move slow," she said, "but it doesn't stop." Brandon stood beside her, waiting, then added, "This woman didn't just defend me. She defended every worker ever told to stay grateful and quiet." That night in Hoboken, Jade sat with her binder. The case was over. But the work wasn't. Headlines roared. Interviews piled up. Invitations from talk shows and podcasts stacking in her inbox. She agreed to very few. Instead, she wrote a single-long essay in a national magazine about the quiet ways power hides behind legal language and polished hallways. The attention felt bruising, not glamorous. Justice, one still carried scars. Brandon invited her to dinner near Battery Park. No cameras, no entourage, just two survivors. "I keep expecting to wake up back at day one," he admitted over chowder, "like someone will tell me it was all imagined." "It wasn't," Jade said. "Dreams don't leave threats on your doorstep." He laughed softly. "How are you really?" She twirled her spoon. "Tired, hyper-alert, but clearer-headed than I've ever been. You?" He exhaled, relieved and humbled. "I almost became the villain in someone else's narrative." "You were blind," Jade said calmly, "and the system counted on that." Brandon nodded. "I'll never stop paying attention again." They tapped glasses, his wine, her water, not to celebrate victory but to honor vigilance. The next morning, Jade visited Elena's father's shop in Brooklyn. The shattered glass had been replaced. A small handwritten sign taped inside read, "Thank you, Jade." The man behind the counter folded shirts with practiced hands. "You must be Miss Thompson," he said in a thick Brooklyn accent. "Elena says you're tougher than steel and softer than fresh bread." Jade smiled. "That's high praise." He motioned to a stool. "Sit, let me tell you something." She did. He folded quietly, then spoke. "When Elena was little, she hid in the back with comic books, said she was practicing to be a hero. I laughed, never thought the world gave girls like her, or you, capes. Then you walked into that federal courtroom and made them listen. So thank you." Jade blinked away heat. "I didn't do it alone." "Nobody does," he said, "but somebody has to start it." They shared cheap coffee that tasted better than most expensive lattes, and for a while, it felt like family. Later that week, Jade spoke at a community legal forum in Harlem. No robe, no suit, just a sweater and jeans. "Justice," she told the crowd, "doesn't begin in marble buildings. It starts in mailrooms, kitchens, supply closets. It starts when someone says, 'No, this is wrong,' even when nobody's watching. Sometimes," she added, "it ends with people in power losing their comfort so the truth can breathe." The audience stood, applause rolling not like spectacle but recognition. Afterward, a young black woman approached, maybe 20, clutching a beat-up civil procedure textbook. "Miss Thompson, I want to do what you do. I want to fight for people who don't yet know they need help." Jade took the book, flipped through worn pages, then handed it back. "Start by learning their stories, their fears, their names. Law's a tool. The real work is listening." The girl nodded. eyes burning. On her walk back to the car, Jade passed a fresh mural. There she was, apron and all, arms folded, gaze unshaken. Behind her, painted words read, "She didn't wait for permission." Jade stared, then let out a small, startled laugh. She snapped a photo, not for posting, but as proof. Back home that night, Jade sat at her kitchen table again. The binder remained, thick with history. She didn't stash it away. Instead, she opened her laptop and started a new document, the People's Law Project. Its mission: offer real guidance to workers and whistleblowers without terrifying fees or retaliation. She wasn't chasing partnership at a gleaming firm. She wanted a place where janitors, cashiers, home health aides, assistants, people like her, could find someone to stand with them. Because justice, she knew now, should never depend on what you earn or what you wear to work. As she typed, a quiet sense of peace settled over her, not the absence of conflict but the presence of purpose. The bruises hadn't vanished. The system was still flawed. But Jade Thompson, once the silent woman with a mop, was now building a stage for voices like hers. 1 year later, she stood in a very different courtroom, small, tucked into an old building downtown. No cameras, no broadcast, just folding chairs filled with mechanics, bus drivers, home health aides, janitors, baristas. At the front, a simple lectern bore a plaque, "The People's Law Project, free legal support for workers." "Most of you know my story," Jade began, smile faint. "And if you don't, you've probably heard someone else tell it, bigger than I ever intended." Light laughter rippled. "I never set out to be a lawyer. I just set out to survive, to work, to look out for my own. Then I saw something wrong. I spoke, and everything shifted." She paused. "But here's what nobody mentions. Speaking up is only the first step. Justice isn't a single swing of the gavel. It's a daily decision. It doesn't end in court. It starts there and continues in rooms like this." At the back, Brandon stood quietly, hands folded, a small proud smile on his face. His company had rebuilt, leaner, stricter about ethics. He'd hired Jade as an external ethics consultant, but she refused a salary. She directed the funding to this very program instead. "We started this project," Jade continued, "because too many people were told to navigate the law alone, with no translation, no advocate, told to trust a system that was never designed with them in mind." On the wall, a mural showed hands reaching upward, not for power, but for fairness. Names filled the space around it. People the project had helped in its first year. Wrongfully fired employees. Tenants resisting illegal evictions. Whistleblowers finally protected. "So far," Jade said, "we've trained 25 volunteers, translated forms into Spanish, Haitian Creole, Tagalog. We've opened 3 satellite drop-in clinics, and we're barely getting started." Applause rose again, steady and sincere. Afterward, Jade stepped outside into crisp autumn air. Elena joined her, cheeks flushed from the cold. "Can you believe it's only been a year?" Elena asked. "Feels longer," Jade said. "Also like yesterday." "I still get scared," Elena admitted, "that someone's watching, that it'll vanish." Jade placed a hand on her shoulder. "Fear sticks around," she said, "but it shrinks when you've got people standing next to you." They walked toward the subway together, blending into the crowd. Just 2 women in coats, no cameras following. Ordinary again, and somehow that felt revolutionary. Later that night, Jade sat at her familiar table, binder beside a new folder labeled Draft, Whistleblower Protection Expansion Bill. She wasn't done, not even close. As she revised the language, her phone buzzed, unknown number. Her chest tightened for a moment before she answered. "This is Jade." A tentative woman's voice came through. "You don't know me. I'm Cassandra. I clean offices in Midtown. Last week I saw something I wasn't supposed to. They told me to forget it, but I can't. I don't know where to turn." Jade smiled gently into the phone. "You did the right thing calling," she said. "You're not on your own anymore." Silence, then a broken sob. "Thank you." Jade looked out at the city that once treated her as invisible and was now reaching for her. "Let's start from the beginning," she said. "Walk me through everything." Because justice, she'd learned, wasn't a single battle. It was a continuum, a legacy that grew every time someone refused to stay silent. Jade leaned back in her chair, whispering to herself, "Round 2. The night outside hummed, not with threat this time, but with possibility. Jade Thompson's story shows that real justice often starts in the quietest rooms, with people holding brooms, serving food, cleaning offices. It proves courage isn't about titles or degrees, but choosing to speak when silence would be safer. Armed with truth, persistence, and empathy, even the most unlikely hero can challenge empires built on lies. Courage doesn't retire. If you are over 65, you've seen enough of life to know that courage is not just for the young. You remember bus boycotts, strikes, women pushing into jobs they were told they couldn't do. Jade Thompson's story reminds us that bravery can show up in an apron and worn-out shoes, not just in a suit and tie. She walked into that Manhattan courtroom when no one expected her to speak, yet she stood her ground when everyone expected her to step aside. Many of you have faced moments like that, speaking up for a coworker, correcting a doctor who wasn't listening, or refusing to be dismissed because of age or background. Jade teaches us that courage is not loud anger. It is steady refusal to be erased. Even when powerful men tried to scare her into silence, she kept going, not for fame, but because she knew what it felt like to be powerless and would not let someone else be crushed the same way. Ordinary work can lead to extraordinary purpose. Older Americans know what it is to work hard in jobs that rarely earn applause. Cleaning offices at night, caring for grandchildren, keeping food on the table when money is tight. Jade's story honors that kind of life. She scrubbed floors in a wealthy man's home, then quietly studied case law at the same kitchen table where she paid bills. Many of you have done something similar, reading at the laundromat, learning new skills after retirement, helping a neighbor with paperwork that feels like a foreign language. Jade proves that the place you start does not limit the purpose life has for you. Her classroom was a basement apartment and a cluttered kitchen, yet she used what she learned there to expose a scheme worth tens of millions of dollars. For those who feel their best years are behind them, her journey is a reminder that experience, patience, and the willingness to keep learning can still change the story. For your family, your church, your block. Justice belongs to ordinary people too. If you've lived through Vietnam, Watergate, civil rights battles, and more recent protests, you've probably asked yourself whether justice really works for ordinary folks. Jade's fight against Altair Holdings gives a hard, hopeful answer. Powerful people tried to use the courts like a weapon, counting on fancy lawyers and complicated contracts to hide what they were doing. But it was a housekeeper, someone most executives would never notice, who connected the dots, protected a frightened young whistleblower, and forced the truth into the light. Many of you have seen this pattern before. Companies cutting corners, landlords abusing tenants, bosses expecting loyalty while giving none. Jade reminds us that the law is not supposed to be a private club. With persistence, good allies, and honest evidence, even those with limited income and no famous last name can demand accountability. Justice moves slowly, and it leaves scars. But as long as people like Jade and people like you refuse to look away, it can bend in the right direction. The legacy we still have time to leave. For those in their later years, Jade's story is not just entertainment. It is an invitation. You may not step into a federal courtroom, but you can still stand up when something is wrong at your senior center, your apartment building, or your own family table. You can encourage a grandchild who feels small, support a neighbor who is afraid to speak, or share memories of earlier struggles so younger people know they are not alone. Our legacy is not just the money we leave behind, but the courage and compassion we model until our last breath. Ordinary people standing together can bring down empires built on lies, and that truth is worth passing on. My friends, after walking with Jade through janitors' closets, kitchen tables, and federal courtrooms, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever been treated as less than because of your job, your age, your color, or where you live, and still found the strength to speak up? What helped you stand your ground, or what do you wish you had done differently? Please share your story in the comments, give this video a like, and subscribe to my YouTube channel so we can keep learning from one another and passing these hard-earned lessons forward.